All right, it is 1 o'clock. So today's presentation, I think, is not only relevant if we get into a recessionary period, which I believe technically by the definition of a recession, we are currently in. And for the most part, our clients are not really being hurt too bad by this time period. But if things are to worsen and people really start tightening the belt, these are some strategies that can really, really help you. And I believe if you employ these strategies now, they will help you even more. So you'll become even more profitable. You'll be even more bulletproof, so to speak. So a lot of these things, I think, are things to consider if people start getting a lot tighter with cash. Because again, I don't think we've seen this yet, at least not based on what our clients are telling us, what we're seeing in our business. But I think maybe, into next year, the more and more people talk about a recession, the more and more a self-fulfilling prophecy it will be, and people will ultimately just become tighter and tighter with their money until this period resolves. So either way, these are great strategies. I think you can employ them now, and if things do get crazy, they'll just help you that much more. So enough of that. My promise to you is to give you very actionable ways to make sure your firm can survive a downturn in the economy if it actually really hits the fan, so to speak. So the agenda is we're going to talk about picking a recession-proof service. We're going to talk about getting more efficient with your marketing. And then we're going to talk about diversifying your acquisition channels, just in case, a channel really goes down or the performance really drops. So recession-proof practice areas. So generally practice areas that require litigation will be needed no matter the economic climate. And most of our clients during COVID had no slowdown in business. In fact, they generally increased quite a bit. We had a lot of firms double and even triple revenues. And so just some of the main practice areas to consider, and there are a lot of implications to these practice areas that I'm going to break down in the next few slides, but criminal law, probate, family law, and personal injury. Generally, these practice areas are going to stay pretty steady. Personal injury during COVID did slow down because people stopped driving, but in a recession, you're not going to see that as much as we did with COVID because there were shutdowns. Areas that can get hurt are estate planning, business formation, and the more transactional, and also the more passive type practice areas where people are electing to hire you out of preeminence or planning. So those are kind of the main ones, right? People starting businesses, that might not happen as much. So contract formation or LLC formation, that type of stuff may slow down. Estate planning may slow down because, again, people are pulling back on their personal finances and they're not really worried about planning as much. So those are the general ones that we're going to see getting hurt. So practice areas that are ideal because not only are they kind of recession proof, there are also a lot of other implications. And again, this is not only for recession, this is for right now. There are practice areas that are far more profitable than others. And let me explain what I mean by that. So the first thing to consider for a profitable practice area is the cost per acquisition. So what does it actually cost you to acquire a client? If you're paying out a bunch of marketing dollars, how many dollars do you need to spend before a client has signed and paid? And then the other thing to consider is the operational drag of fulfilling a client. And I'll explain more about that in the next few slides here. So the cost per acquisition, I'll use that word a lot, meaning the cost to acquire a customer for bankruptcy or estate planning is the same cost per acquisition for a divorce client, a probate client, a criminal case, and in some cases, a personal injury case. However, these other case types have much higher lifetime values. So let's say, for example, that it costs you $3,500 to get a new estate planning client. This client may pay you $3,500 for a trust, which is great. And that means that your marketing cost is about 14% of the value of the client. Now, if you charge more than that, then that's great. Then it's about 10%. But in a recession, let's say that your closing rate goes down because people are being tighter with cash. Now your CPA or your cost per acquisition may be $800 to make the same $3,500, except now the total cost to acquire that client is 22% of the entire value. And that 22% is taking away directly from your bottom line. And so when we deal with practice areas like this, where it's a flat rate or it's a one-time transaction and we don't continue to monetize that client, the cost per acquisition is a lot. It makes up a lot of the total value of the client. And so we have to make sure that we're truly efficient in our marketing and in our sales process. If our numbers start to slip a little bit, our margins become thinner and thinner and thinner, and it becomes harder and harder to survive, and it becomes harder and harder to scale. Versus a litigation-based practice where you have much more wiggle room. And so a criminal case will have the same $500 cost per acquisition because, believe it or not, the leads are relatively the same cost, but you can make $10,000 plus on that. A divorce will have the same $500 CPA, but you can make $10,000 plus on that, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. There are some practice areas where the marketing cost is identical to a litigation-based practice, but you're only selling that client one time, meaning they don't have a reoccurring aspect to their billing. And as a result, it becomes harder and harder to monetize these types of clients, and your margins are thinner and thinner. So if you think about the biggest firms in the country, and obviously this is if you want to do litigation, but if you think about the biggest firms in the country, they're generally firms that are using these types of models where the client is worth much, much, much more than they cost to acquire the client, which is how they can grow so rapidly, is because they have a ton of excess cash to dump back into marketing, dump back into staff. So the smaller transactions that are one time, those are harder because you have to continually acquire new clients. Whereas if you have a divorce client that pays you for a year, that person has paid you for a year. They paid your salary for a year. So those are things to consider when it comes to choosing a practice area. Now, the other thing is the operational drag behind the practice area. So from a fulfillment standpoint, and I'm not talking actually doing the law work because I'm not a lawyer and I don't feel qualified to speak on that. But from a fulfillment standpoint, having more clients worth less can take more employees. Generally, the more people you're serving, you'll need more support staff. So let's just say that you want to make $500K a year, right? And you're selling $3,500 trusts. Then that means that you need to sell 142 clients. Now I'm going to get a little mathy here for a second, but I just want to back into the numbers and have you see what the difference is when you're trying to hit a 500K goal. So for 142 clients would require a certain amount of leads. And I'm going to back into those numbers. So if you close at 40% and your leads have an appointment set rate of 70%, and 70% of the people actually attend your consultation, then you would need 724 leads for the year. You would need to have 507 consultations booked on your calendar, and you would need to have 354 people attend those consultations for the year based on those metrics there. So you don't have to get into the details of those metrics, but just in general, those are the metrics behind closing 142 clients for the year if you want to hit 500K. Now, the implications of that is that you need someone to work 724 leads. And let's just say that each lead is getting touched 15 times. That's a lot of touch points that somebody has to do. And that somebody is probably a support staff member. Hopefully it's not you, but if it is you, then you have to balance following up at 724 leads and then selling 724, and then also doing the work for your 142 clients that you've now brought on to make 500K. So you can see that the operational drag, just from a sales standpoint, is quite high for this type of goal. Now let's compare that to a 500K goal when you only need 50 clients because you're selling 10K retainers or 10K lifetime values. So if we keep our metrics intact, meaning we're closing 40% of the people we talk to, out of all of our leads, 70% of them are booking an appointment, and out of those people that book an appointment, 70% of them are showing. That means for the year, we only need 255 leads. We only need to book 178 consultations, and only 125 of those need to actually attend the consult to get our 50 clients that pay us or that are worth 10K plus. Meaning these are like divorce cases, criminal cases, potentially probate cases if you're collecting a percentage of the estate, depending on where you're located. So you can see that the operational drag of this setup is much, much lower. And the main function of this setup is you're in a litigation-based practice, or you're in a practice where you're monetizing one single client many, many, many times, or they're paying you over and over again. Sorry, there's a cue coming in here. Not necessarily. So the question was, my close rate sucks and my offering is likely wrong. So it's not that it's your close rate is bad or your offering is wrong. These are just things to consider when you are trying to hit goals and you're not necessarily hitting them. Is starting to experiment with a few different areas that are related to your area, but you can monetize them further. The other option is, and this is a bit of a tangent, is if you're in a practice area that you sell a one-time product to, what other products are related to that you could further monetize them in the back end? Because once you have a customer and they're a paying customer, they trust you, they like you, hopefully you've done a good job. What other things are related to that practice area that you can sell them? And so an example of this would be, let's say you're an estate planning attorney, and this is kind of out there a little bit, but it's something that I always think about because this is just how my entrepreneurial mind works. If someone is planning for their death, obviously, that's why they're getting this, then you may be able to sell them final expense insurance. You may be able to sell them life insurance. They're in the planning phase, so you may be able to sell them all kinds of other things that are related to planning for their finances, for their heirs, for their life, for their death, right? They're planning. So you got them at the right time if they're buying a trust. On the side of probate, what some people do, and they do this with tremendous success, is after they fulfill the probate, right? Maybe they're getting $3,500 on that if it's a flat rate probate uncontested, and there's a house involved. They are now selling the house, and now they're making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 commission on the house when the probate was only worth $3,500. And you only need a couple of those a year to really boost that practice area's revenue. So there are other ways to monetize a practice area, just a consideration. Again, this was a complete tangent, not necessarily planned in the presentation, but these are some things that you can think about to make your customers more valuable. Because ultimately, if you can make your customers more valuable, you can afford higher cost per acquisitions, you can afford to have lower closing rates because you're making so much more money on these people. So if you close at 10% instead of 30%, but you're making way more money off of the people you are closing, it doesn't hurt as bad. You have more wiggle room in your formula. So it all comes down to your formula, which I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. That actually relates to later in the presentation. That was a great question. So just to sum up this slide, the operational drag of a practice area that has a higher ticket price is much, much less. And we also see this, believe it or not, in the agency world, just to give you insight into our business, right? There are agencies that charge you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, and they have 10 clients. Then there are agencies who are bulk agencies who charge you $299 a month. Think of your Fine Laws and your Justias. Those are their prices, $299 a month, but they have 17,000 clients. Now imagine the amount of employees you need to service 17,000 clients versus the agency that has 10 clients at $40,000 a month. They may be making similar money, but one has way more operational drag, way more headache, way more staff, way more software. This one has way less, but they're doing a high value service, and so they can charge more. So this is in every aspect of business, but it does relate to law very, very well, because you guys have the ability to pivot or do multiple practice areas if you need to pivot and make more money, or if you need to pivot if there was a recession. And I keep saying that because I think technically we're in one, but if things get worse. So again, great question. Sorry for the tangent. So the next aspect that you can do is make sure that your marketing and sales are efficient as possible, because there are a few ways we can work this whole entire formula of your business. We can charge more or make more money per customer. And on the flip side of that, we can also be more efficient with our cost per acquisition, so it's not so much a factor of our total value of a client. And so this is one of the exercises you do where you have to be completely honest with yourself as the business owner or as the marketing person. And I do this all the time in our business, is I say, am I doing everything in my power to make this campaign or this thing perfect? Have I truly done what I was supposed to do? And if I did, well, then that thing doesn't work. And if I didn't, then I need to go back to the drawing board and improve my process until I know with certainty that I've done everything in my power to make this thing work. And I'll give you some examples of what that is. So some questions to ask yourself is lead cost at or better than benchmark values? So like if you're doing Google ads, or if you're purchasing leads, or if you're doing Facebook ads, or if you're doing local service ads, what are my competitors paying for leads, or what are benchmark costs associated with this? And is mine better than or at that cost? Because if you're paying up for leads when you shouldn't be, then that's going to add to your bottom line. It's going to add to your cost per acquisition, and actually has quite a ripple effect down the sales funnel. The next thing is what is my appointment set rate? So if you get 100 leads that come into your firm, how many of those people are booking a consultation with you? And do you even know that number? So that would be one of those questions where you're being honest. If you don't know the number, well, that's bad because you don't know the number, but it's good because now it's something you can directly improve and actually make more money. What is your appointment show rate? So how many people book on your calendar, and actually how many of those people show up to that consultation? Because ultimately, if you're not talking to the person, you can't close them. And then what is your close rate? And to be honest, most attorneys have great closing rates. I feel like when you talk to enough people, you display that you're subject matter experts, you help people, you're providing value. And I don't really see a lot of attorneys with poor closing rates generally. Whenever someone sits with a consultation with an attorney, they're usually closing like 30 to 40%, which is generally a good closing rate across many, many industries for a high ticket item. And generally attorneys are considered high ticket. I believe high ticket is considered anything like above $3,000. I don't know, don't quote me on that. But again, most of you guys have great closing rates. So that's typically not the issue. Usually the issue lies within the set rate, the show rate, and how many leads you're getting. That's generally where the biggest improvement lies. The next thing is how many times do you follow up with a lead? And there are a lot of firms out there who do very, very well, and they're usually touching a new lead. So someone coming into your firm, they have not yet made contact, they have not yet done a consultation. There are firms who touch the lead 15 times, and that is 15 touch points between email, text message, and phone calls. And so 15 touch points is a lot of touch points. This goes back to that operational drag thing I was talking about. If you have 724 leads that you need and you got to touch each one 15 times, that's a lot of touch points. Now, some of that can be automated, but again, someone is controlling those touch points. So are you following up with your leads, your new leads, at least 15 times through multiple channels? If the answer is no, and you're not getting the results you want, then maybe try and move up to that 15 touch point level and see what happens. Are you starting to get the pull through that you want to see? And again, the reason we're doing all this is to make things more efficient, so our cost per acquisition goes down and we make more money. Because if your cost per acquisition is lower than it was, the rest of that spread is going directly in your pocket. How many times do you follow up with a hot lead? So meaning when someone has actually attended a consultation, how many times does that lead get followed up with? A lot of people do 5 to 10. So they've attended a consult, you check in every once in a while and you're kind of harassing them. And it is my opinion that if you're not getting people to say, leave me alone, you're probably not doing enough follow-up. I have gotten a couple leave me alones, and again, it is hurtful for the moment, but generally it usually means that you're not following up enough, because you have to think about when you're texting somebody or when you're emailing somebody, they may see it and then life gets in the way and then they never get back to you. So that gentle reminder really, really helps. I know there are some people in this presentation, in this webinar that I have followed up with for months, and they probably hated me, but again, I was annoying, I was persistent, and actually some of them are actually clients. So again, follow-up does really, really help. And how many review requests do you send out per week? I will say the Google reviews are becoming such a big ticket item for your firm. They help your SEO, they help people's determination whether or not they're going to work with you. So if you're getting a lot of consultations a week and you're providing a lot of value, how many review requests are going out to help boost your overall firm's presence? Because this is really, really going to pay dividends. So these are just a few of the questions that you can ask. The other thing that you can do for yourself is go through your sales process, go through your lead process, go through your marketing, go through your operations, and just ask yourself, is this bulletproof? And you'll probably live a very frustrating life, because this is what I do all the time, is this bulletproof? No, it's not. Okay, I got to go back to the drawing board and fix this, or I have to try and make this client experience better, or I have to get more leads here that are more qualified. Those are the things that we have to do constantly to be more and more efficient, because that is what your competitors are doing. And ultimately, if you're not keeping up with them, you're going to fall behind and you're going to start losing money because they're setting the price of the market. So some of the numbers that you can watch, and this is just a general overview of this concept. I do this more in depth in other webinars that you can go see on our YouTube. These are the numbers that you need to know, and I'll talk more about these numbers in the next slide, is how many leads are coming into your firm. And I count a lead as anybody inquiring. So this could be qualified, not qualified. This is raw leads. You can go a step further and have marketing qualified leads, but generally I don't want to do that because I don't want to complicate the process. But how many leads are coming into your firm? Now, out of that, how many people are booking a consultation? That is your booking rate. Of that, how many people are showing to the consultation? That is your show rate. And then of that, how many people are actually closing and paying? That's your close rate. Now, generally, some benchmarks to go after here is if you have a 70% booking rate, a 70% show rate, and a 30 to 40% close rate, you're doing really good. That means you're at benchmark, you're doing great, and most marketing for you is going to be extremely profitable. So you have some wiggle room in there. You can have a little bit lower show rate, a little bit lower close rate, but those are the numbers that you want to try and hit. So definitely know those numbers, review them very often, because as those numbers start to slip, it means your efficiencies are slipping, and now you're starting to pay up when you don't have to. So again, you want to be religious with this. Now, what do you do if you actually have a problem with some of these numbers? Let's just talk through some of the things you can easily do to fix this. And again, I do go into more detail on this on other webinars, but so there's 4 numbers. The number of leads is controlled by lead costs going up. So our platform is becoming more and more competitive, and maybe you need to spend more money, or maybe your marketing is not as efficient as it could be. Maybe it's my fault. Again, we're a marketing agency, and sometimes things will go bad and we have to fix them, and then we get back to benchmark. It's not a perfect system that's super consistent as far as cost. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. So is lead cost going up? And if you're putting in the same input and your lead cost is going up, well, then your number of leads is going to go down. So that's something that we can fix. Or there's not enough volume in your area. Let's say you're in a small rural town and there's only a couple 100,000 people. There may not be enough volume to get you the number of leads that you need to get to actually hit your overall sales goals. So do you need to expand geographically? Those are some things that you can consider. Generally, those are the two things that are going to affect your number of leads. I think getting leads is a relatively easy thing to do with the amount of tools you have access to: purchase leads, listings, and I'll go through all those acquisition channels in a minute here. Your booking rate is another thing that is that can be controlled. So do you do paid consults or do you do free consults? This is something that is going to tremendously impact your booking rate. Generally, when people do paid consults, you can see booking rates anywhere from 10% to 40%. 40% is pretty high, meaning that if you're charging like $250, $350 for a consult, 40% of the total leads are now booking with you. If you're doing 10%, then you're probably not going to be profitable on most cold marketing channels, which most digital marketing is going to be cold. That means they're not referrals to you or they haven't heard of you before. So that is a serious implication, and it's a constant, I would say, debate in the industry, free versus paid. If you're doing paid consults, you need to make sure to sell the consult. You need to sell the value behind that consult, because ultimately at this point, you're now selling them something. It's not just a sit down. They have to be sold because there's another attorney 5 minutes away that's going to do a free one. What's the difference? Give me something, sell me, right? So that's a big implication there. The quality of leads will also affect your booking rate. So generally a good parameter for if a lead is qualified or not, whether or not they're broke or anything like that, is, are they in my practice area and are they in my location? So in the example of divorce is, do they need a divorce and are they in my county, right? That would be a marketing qualified lead. And if it is, then that person could potentially book on your calendar and they potentially could be a client. Now, they may not be the best client, but they're marketing qualified, meaning the marketing is doing its job. It's bringing in people that want a divorce. So quality of leads is important. If you're running a divorce campaign and you're getting people looking for real estate, problems, then you're not getting marketing qualified leads, and we need to fix the quality of the lead. And this will impact your booking rate because you're not going to book people who are looking for real estate attorneys when you're a divorce attorney. So that's something that's easily controlled. Not following up with the leads. So if the leads aren't getting touched a bunch of times, then the chances of them booking on your calendar is going to go down dramatically. Missing phone calls is kind of related to this. If they're missing phone calls and they never talk to anybody, there's no way they're going to book on your calendar. And so as a result, our booking rate's going to be lower. Show rate. So this is when they've already booked on your calendar and now they need to show up to their Zoom or to their in-person meeting, whatever it is. So reminders are a really easy win here. You could do phone call reminders if you're wanting to do extra credit, have the receptionist call them the day before or a few hours before. SMS, so text messages, reminders. A lot of software will facilitate this, and email. Generally, Calendly is the most widely used one that I've heard of, and I personally use Calendly, and I really, really like it. I've used others, and my booking or my show rate went down, so I went back to Calendly. So that's an easy win. A reactivation series is another one. So all of the people who have missed a consultation with you, those are people that initially showed interest, and you can put them back into a reactivation series, maybe a day or two later from missing the appointment, to get them back on the calendar. So hopefully they can show back up, because it's still a single lead. It's a unique lead. It's going to affect your overall rate. And then not selling the consult. So even if you do a free consultation, it's still a good idea to amp them up about the consultation itself. We're going to solve your problems. We're going to do this. These are some happy customer reviews. You can put them through a series before the consult that will get them encouraged about the consult itself and have them really believe that this consult is the answer to all their problems, and they're more likely to show up. So if you've ever had a meeting where you were getting sold on a piece of software or something that you were really excited about, like, man, this is going to change my firm, you probably showed to that consultation because you were excited about the product. So you want your end user to be excited about your service, that it's going to really, really help them. So sell the consultation and your show rates will improve. And then closing rate. So generally here, the things that you can improve are not communicating enough value. So you're not necessarily selling enough, or you're not following up. And I prefer this answer because, again, I'm not a master salesperson for attorneys. I think follow-up will do a whole lot of work for you, because generally if you're showing interest in that person and you're on the ball, they're going to be like, wow, this person is so proactive. They're going to be great as my attorney. So that's just another one. Someone asked, can you repeat the ideal rates again? So the ideal rates for a booking rate is, I would say, benchmark. So it's not ideal, but it's benchmark. Is 70% book rate, 70% show rate, 30 to 40% close rate. Now, I've seen people do much, much better than that on the closing rate standpoint, but those are just numbers to aim for. What that's going to roughly work out to, and before I run my mouth, let me just make sure I'm right about this, is, so if you book at 70%, you show at 70%, and you close at 40%, it means you're closing 20% of the raw leads. So every single lead that comes into your firm, 20% of them are closing and paying clients. that is a really, really solid close rate overall as a raw closing rate. And if you don't know what I mean by raw, put something in the chat or put something in the Q&A. All that means is every single inquiry, whether they're qualified or not qualified, 20% of those people are turning into a client. Now, just as another tangent, what does that mean as far as the economics are concerned? Let's say that we got 10 leads, and the leads, and this is just for easy math, the leads were $50 a lead. So we paid $500 for 10 leads. 2 of those people closed. That means that we paid $250 to acquire 2 clients. And let's just say that it's a client worth $5,000. You just made $10,000 on $500. Now, a more likely scenario, let's just say we're talking divorce or probate or estate planning or bankruptcy, because all of them have similar lead costs. Criminal, they all have very, very similar lead costs. Let's say it's $70 a lead. We got 10 leads. It was $700 for those 10 leads. We closed 2 clients. It's a $350 cost per acquisition, and we're making $5,000 off this person. So we paid $700 in our marketing costs. We made 10 grand. Everybody's happy. So you can see how profitable 20% can be. A lot of people, when I say 20%, they're like, oh, that sounds horrible. But a lot of people are used to closing referrals. So they close at like 100%. On an internet lead, a 20% closing rate is really, really solid. So those are the numbers. Again, great question. So if you have any questions about this, again, I have more details on this on our YouTube channel. I talk about this a lot, or you can leave a question in the chat below. So this next one is very, very, I would say, tactical. I think you can get a lot out of it because it gives you a really clear picture and expectations into acquisition channels. So I'm just going to run through the main acquisition channels that I would use if I was an attorney. And I'm basing this off of, and I feel old saying this, just about 10 years of marketing experience. I've seen a lot of different channels. I've seen what works, what doesn't, and this would be what I would do. Or if I was marketing for my mom, I would tell her to do this. So, you know, I'm not going to steer you wrong. So the first and the easiest is Google Business Profile. If you invest a lot of attention and time into Google Business Profile, it will really, really help you. And the best part is that it's free. Your timeline to success here is 3 to 6 months. And I'm basing that off of you getting reviews on a consistent basis, because this is going to boost your profile up the rankings, which is going to get you a ton of free traffic. So the pros are it's easy to set up. It's free. You do get a snowball effect here, meaning as you start climbing the rankings, you start getting more leads, you start getting more reviews, and then you climb the rankings more, and it just piles on top of itself. So Google Business Profile is something that you need to be investing in, and it's going to improve your overall presence. This will even improve your closing rate, because people are going to go and see how many reviews you have and be like, oh my gosh, this is the best attorney in town. Let's hire him. Cons are it takes time to scale, so you have to put in the time, and you can't throttle it up and down manually. So you can't be like, hey, I want to spend 30 more grand on Google Business Profile, because it's not a paid platform necessarily. It's mainly organic. So this is something that everybody should do. I highly, highly recommend it. The next logical step in the progression of let's get into marketing is Google Guaranteed or local service ads. And so Google Guaranteed is the little pictures at the top of Google with the green check mark like I have in the picture here. And this is a really great program. It's a pay-per lead program. So how this program works is it uses exact phrases like divorce attorney near me or probate attorney near me or criminal attorney near me to show your profile, and it's based on reviews. Now the cost, generally entry level cost, and this is just to get the ball rolling, is like $500 a month. It may have actually increased because costs have kind of increased. I would say about $1,000 a month in spend will start getting you leads and start getting you clients. Your timeline to success on this is days. You'll start getting leads almost as soon as you start going, and you can see ROI within a month. The pros of local service ads is they're easy to set up. It's fairly hands-off, meaning you don't have to do a lot of management here. You just have to dispute leads. It's a pay-per-lead program. You can dispute leads. So if the leads are not in your practice area, meaning if I'm a divorce attorney and a real estate person reaches out, I can dispute that lead and get my money back, which is really nice. You're going to get more exposure on the top of Google. So if you're running ads, you're running local service ads, and you're in the map, you're in 3 places all at once, your chances of that person coming to you are much higher. And it doesn't require any web development. So the profile itself lives on Google, and you don't click to a website. So it's really, really convenient from that aspect. The cons are scaling is based on reviews and proximity to the user. So you need a lot of reviews, and it generally helps to be close to the user. It's not too exact for practice areas. And what I mean by that is in some practice areas, like an umbrella term, like estate planning, you can get power of attorney, you can get probate, you can get Medicaid planning, you can kind of get anything under that umbrella. And so as a result, it might not be too exact for the exact case type that you want, but that kind of comes with the territory. And it's harder to control and pinpoint quality. So if something is working in estate planning, you can't just say, hey, Google, get me more of that. Because again, this is a Google run system. So they don't give you a lot of granular control. So it's just a trade-off, right? It's not a lot of management, but you don't get a lot of control. So it's a trade-off. Now, the big brother to this platform is Google Ads. And so this is Google pay-per-click program. So if you ever hear PPC or pay-per-click, it's the same exact type of traffic. So whenever someone is searching for a probate attorney near me or a criminal attorney near me, these ads will trigger as well. Now, the biggest differences in the cost is now you're paying an agency to manage this for you, because generally Google Ads are a lot more complicated. I don't recommend doing it on your own, or you're probably going to lose money unless you know Google Ads. Now, the cost for this entry level, I would say, is around $1,000 to $1,500 a month in ad spend. So that's generally what we recommend to our clients. And the agency fees can be anywhere from $500 to $2,000 plus. And the reason it's $2,000 plus is some agencies will charge you a percentage of your ad spend. So if you're spending $100,000 on ads, they may charge you 20% of that. And now you're paying that agency 20 grand to manage your ads. And so scaling retainers are a part of this industry. It's just something that you have to kind of tread. I don't want to say tread carefully, because it's not a bad thing, because generally as you're spending more money, there is more work associated with it, but it's something to consider. Now, your timeline to success here are days. So you're going to start getting clicks as soon as you start running ads, and you can see ROI in a month. Generally, a lot of our clients do. So really good platform, just a little more complicated, a lot more nuances. Now, the pros are it's very scalable. It's very predictable. You can have many locations very easily. You're able to target income levels on this. So this is one cool thing that we do with our clients is we target top 10%, 20% of income brackets, and it just brings in a higher quality lead. And you are able to pinpoint quality. So if I'm running custody, if I'm running divorce, if I'm running probate, if I'm running estate planning, and I'm running criminal, all for one client, let's say they're a big general firm, I can tell you which ones are bringing in the highest ROI, and then I can shuffle all my money to the highest performing campaign. So you get a little more creative with budget allocation here. The cons are it's more complex to set up. You need experience to run this. Performance can vary based on many factors. So if you're doing this yourself, there's ads, there's the nuances within the platform, there's the landing pages. And so all of those add to the equation of, is this performing or isn't it? And how do I fix it? And the last piece is active management is required. You have to look at Google. We look at it every single day. You have to look at it very regularly, or things can go wrong on you. Now, the next step up from this is SEO. So this is something, it's the same traffic. It's the organic version of the traffic. So like this is your maps, this is your website ranking organically. The cost for this can be anywhere from $300 to $10,000 plus. And I have a big what there, like how the heck can it be this much? So big websites like Justia, FindLaw charge you like $300 a month. They're really not doing anything for you. What they are doing though is their big domain authority, like their big reputation, like they're the big guys in town. They're using that to help your site rank. It's pretty much like a job reference. Think about Elon Musk recommending you to a job. If Elon Musk recommends you, you're probably going to get the job, right? So Justia, FindLaw, they have a lot of linking that they do. And when they put those links on your site and they redirect back to your site, it shows Google that, hey, this is a reputable site because FindLaw is saying that it is. And so that is how they help you climb the rankings. They don't do a lot of the tasks associated with SEO, but that does help. So if you've been in business for a long time and you use them, generally you'll do pretty well with your rankings. So that is why it could be so cheap, because they're not doing anything for you. They're just using their reputation. Now on the $10,000 plus side, they're doing a lot more content for you. They're writing very detailed blog posts. They're posting them. They're doing a lot more work associated with it. So that's generally where SEO can lie. I would say 3,000 to 5,000 is a very happy medium to pay for an SEO retainer. So just consider that. Timeline to success is months to years. So this is the long game. You're not going to see leads in your first week or 2 weeks. It could take time to actually start ranking. But it is worth investing in, especially if you have a good marketing budget. I would say if you're spending above like $5,000 to $10,000 in ads, SEO, and you're not actively doing SEO, it's starting to become worth it for you, and you'll start to see really, really big payouts. The pros are leads will be free eventually. The snowball effect does happen here. So similarly to Google Business Profile, as you start getting reviews, as you start climbing the rankings, you get more leads, it brings more people into your ecosystem. It just starts to snowball. So all of your rankings will climb. It'll be like an exponential curve is kind of how you'll see this. And you get targeted leads. So again, you're optimizing for the keywords that you know are profitable. And so you're going to get leads that are within your practice area. The cons are it takes time and patience. Some practice areas are more competitive than others. So like in the example of personal injury, you're competing against firms that have been there for a long time and they're paying a ton of money for their SEO, and they're on TV and they're on billboards. So they get a ton of traffic that way as well. It requires expertise. So doing this yourself is hard, and it needs active management and content production. So again, it's a pretty hefty service, just something to consider, but it is very worthwhile if you do have the budget for it. Now, social media organic. posting videos and content to your audience. And the idea here is you build a relationship with them by entertaining or providing value. And when the time comes for them and they actually need you, they will choose you. The cost for management, just management, is around $300 to $1,000 per month for people to just post stuff on your profile. And the timeline to success here is it depends. This is a very political answer. And the reason why it depends is A, the content actually needs to be viewed. Because if nobody's viewing it, it's not going to work. Because generally how the Facebook algorithm works is unless a content piece is very interesting and people are interacting with it off the bat, then they will start to show it. If it's not interesting and people are not interacting with it, nobody sees your post. And this is true for everybody. So if you go to our Facebook page, our empirical page, you know who likes my posts? My mom, a couple friends. It's really sad. These are people I don't even want to sell to. And that is because my posts, and I'm being completely honest with myself, are not that interesting to my general audience. I don't have a ton of attorney followers to our page because it's not something I prioritize because of this reason here. Now, if you have very viral content, very interesting content, or very disruptive content, like you're saying crazy stuff, then you'll start to get attention, but it may not be the right attention. So just something to consider. The pros are leads who do get in touch will have an affinity to you and will take little convincing because they kind of have a relationship with you from building up from all your content. And the leads will be cheap because it's organic. So you're posting and you're paying for a service to post, but when the leads do start coming in, if they do start coming in, they'll be cheaper. The cons are it takes time and patience, and there's no guarantee it will work. And algorithms eventually require ad dollars for effective results. So Facebook has definitely seen this. When you post something, the reason nobody sees it is because Facebook wants you to spend money for people to see it. TikTok in the beginning, you could go viral in a matter of days. And now that TikTok is monetizing through ads, it's not happening that much anymore. You're not having like these overnight celebrities because now they want you to spend money on ads unless you're posting very, very interesting content and very entertaining content. They reward you for that. If your content is boring, they don't reward you for it. They require you to spend money to show that people or to show that content to people. And so the algorithm is all about making the company money. When you understand that, you'll understand these concepts. And it's very time intensive if the content is quality. So if you're shooting quality videos and you're putting a lot of thought behind it and you're providing a lot of value, generally that's going to take a lot of time. So that's a con. Social media ads. This is the other side of that coin. So this is a demand generation tactic, meaning these are people who are scrolling and looking at family and friends, and then you're trying to take them off that platform into your ecosystem. So you're trying to generate demand. And this is based on demographics, interests, life events. And so you need ads to do this. The cost for this generally for people to manage this type of campaign is around $1,000 a month. And this is to spend on ads, and your agency fees are going to be around $500 to $1,500 a month for a social media agency to actually manage this. Your timeline to success here is you can see ROI in a month, but again, sample sizes kind of matter here. So if you have 5 leads, then maybe or maybe not, you might not see success with 5 leads, but if you generated 100, I would expect to see some ROI. And if you don't, well, then maybe you need to tweak something. Now, the pros here with social media ads is leads tend to be cheaper. These platforms tend to generate cheaper leads because they're cheaper platforms in general compared to like Google. You can go viral, or you can have like unicorn-based ads. So an ad that really, really hits for you. So you said something that really tweaked the nerve, or it was a really engaging piece of content and the ad really takes off, which is great because that'll bring you a ton of cheap leads. It can build your awareness. It can make more detailed ads. So with social media, you have the ability to have longer form videos. You can write a bunch in the actual Facebook ad space, so you can talk a lot more to your audience versus Google is very short, punchy ads. So with this, you have more of ability to build a relationship with your audience, which is the last pro. Now, the cons here is the leads tend to require more follow-up or nurturing. So in the example of someone downloading a book, for example, I have this book here where it says probate clients equals fast cash flow. This was a social media ad that I ran. They get this book when they buy. Those leads require a lot of follow-up. Those are people who are just kind of searching for information. They're at the top of the funnel, and I need to follow up with them for months and months and months and months. So they require follow-up and they require nurturing. So it's like a little baby. I'm trying to nurture into a nice grown adult, and hopefully they become a client someday. That's the idea behind it. Your audience can burn out. So if you're dealing with a very small audience, let's say it's like, ages 50 to 55, someone who's interested in investing, and it's a very finite audience, you have to refresh your ads a lot. Otherwise they'll get bored of your ads. So like if you see my ads, I try and refresh them as much as I can, because otherwise you see them and you're like, oh yeah, that's empirical 360, whatever, I'm tired of hearing from you. And that's what happens to your prospects. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of seeing this ad. Show me something new, show me something different. And today's audience gets burned out very, very quick. And it's harder to scale because of this burnout. So if you have an ad that does work, it will burn out eventually. And so it becomes harder and harder to scale because you have to constantly create new ads. And that's the last con, is it requires a lot of creative work. You have to write engaging ad copy. You have to create engaging images. You have to do engaging videos. And so it is a lot of work to actually make this work. This next one, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. This is networking. So attending like BNI meetings, timeline to success is weeks or months. The pros here are your closing rate's going to be high, right? Because these are personal relationships. The cons are it's very time intensive. It's not scalable. And eventually your referrals start to dry up. This is generally the complaints I hear when people come to me is like, look, I get a lot of referrals. I do networking, but after a while, it's just kind of drying up and it's super time intensive. And it's hard to hire and plan for the future based on networking. Unless you have a real networking system dialed in, like if I attend 5 meetings, I'll talk to 6 people and 3 of those will become consults and 1 of them will become a sale, which you can do. It's just one of those things that a lot of people can't plan for. So you can't really hire an associate based on this because you just never know when the next piece of business is going to come through the door. So that's networking. And the last one is listing services. So these are like your Avos, your Justia. These I like because they're free, a lot of them, and it's just more exposure to you. The timeline to success is months to years unless you sponsor them. So again, I would recommend doing all of the free ones because you're going to get free leads and exposure. And there are a ton of these you can list on. There's like 15 that we do for our clients that do our SEO package that you just list your profile, it points back to your site and you get free traffic. The issue with this is it's not super scalable unless you're sponsoring the post. The lead quality is hard to control because again, you don't really know who's coming through on the other end or how they even found you from that article. It could be an article about cheap divorces or cheap estate plans. So now they're coming to your site because somehow they found you on the site and now you're getting cheap clients. So something to consider there. And the paid versions tend to have long-term contracts. So I've heard some of these platforms have like 2-year contracts. And so if it's not working, you're kind of stuck with them, which is not cool. So that was the recession-proof presentation. There was a ton of information in there. I tried to cover it as high level as I could to just expose you to the ideas. If you guys are interested in me drilling down on anything or talking more about things more specifically, I'm happy to do that. But again, I really appreciate you guys attending, and I appreciate the questions coming in. I will post this recording on YouTube and send it out, and I'll see you guys on the next presentation.